You're listening to episode 21 of A Whole New You podcast. Today, Brenna McGowan returns for another interview. This time, we're discussing website tips. Brenna gives us strategies to grow email lists, which in turn can create more sales and drive more traffic to our sites. Welcome to A Whole New You podcast. I'm your co-host, Kim Maravich. I'm a registered nurse and author of the book 360 Health. I'm joined by my dear friend, Lori Biddle, a health and wellness coach certified through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. Our show exists to inspire and empower women to take charge of their health with weekly tips and conversation about self-care, mindset, nutrition, fitness, and clean living. Please keep in mind that the material provided in this podcast is intended as general information only and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. We're thrilled to have you here. Let's get to the show. Before we get to our interview with Brenna, I'd like to read a 5-star review that we got through iTunes. This one is by Stein412, and it says, "Love. I am so excited for you two. I can't wait to hear more, and I'm glad that you found each other." Thank you so much. We really appreciate this sweet little review. It means so much to us that not only are you taking the time to write these reviews, but that you're thinking about us and that you're also cheering us on from the sidelines. So for those of you who haven't left us a review yet, we would really appreciate it if you took a minute to go into iTunes, leave us a rating and review, and we will be sure to read it on the show. All right, thanks again, and let's get to the episode. Welcome back, everybody. Today, I'm pleased to have Brenna McGowan joining us again for a follow-up interview. Brenna is a marketing strategist and copywriter from the Sacramento area. She started her own business in 2018 after working with other companies for years. She helps small businesses create personal and strategic marketing plans, focusing on organic social media marketing and copywriting. Last week in episode 20, Brenna talked to us all about Instagram and how to grow a following that was loyal and engaged. So I've invited her back for another interview because she's such a wealth of knowledge. And frankly, we just had more to talk about. So this week, she returns to speak with us about websites and tips on how to grow our email lists and gain traffic. So if you have a small business, if you are an entrepreneur, a mompreneur, a blogger, or are in any kind of sales, this episode will be really instrumental for you and your website. But even if you don't have a website, just hang in there because Brenna will give you a new appreciation for what goes on behind the scenes and into building a great site and one that you would love to visit. You'll understand why you're drawn to some sites over others too. So Brenna, welcome back. I'm excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I learned so much last week from you, Brenna, all about Instagram. And even though I'm on there on the regular, you have so many tips. And again, I just encourage people to follow you on there because like almost every day you post something that I've never heard of before or could help me on my own Instagram. So thank you for sharing all your knowledge.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, last week. So as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about emails today. And actually in our last interview, I had brought this up as part of one of the final questions. And I said, you know what, Brenna, we're just going to kind of edit that out and we're going to ask you this again. She agreed to come back, which was so nice because we're taking a lot of her time to do this. But I just felt like she had so much to offer about websites also. So people often on Instagram may have a website and they're trying to draw people over to that as well. So Brenna, last week, we talked about getting people from Instagram to our websites. So I have a 2-part question for you. The first is, why is it important to get people's email addresses when they visit our websites? And then the second part is just how do we collect those email addresses once people make it to our sites?
Well, I think the biggest reason why is we don't own our followers on Instagram or Facebook or any social media platform. So whenever we are thinking about creating an online marketing plan, I consider the website kind of your home base. That's where you want to push people to as often as possible. And especially recently, Facebook announced that it's going to be decreasing the feed as we know it. I think it just confirms that once again, getting people off of these social media sites and onto platforms we own, like our websites, is so important. And once they get to our website, we want to be able to collect their email address so that we can follow up with them. So that's some of the why. The great thing about too is once you get people to your website, and they're actually on there, we can give them an invitation to become part of our email list, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second. But from that point on, when you're first beginning, this is free. Getting people and getting them over, and if you use a email marketing platform like Mailchimp, under 2,000 subscribers, at least at this point, it's free to send people emails. And so I think there's so much emphasis, especially on Instagram, which is a great platform. I love Instagram. My business has grown because of Instagram. But when you really start looking at the effectiveness of marketing, email marketing is just such a more effective way to market the people that are following us. On social, only about 2 to 6% of followers of your organic following actually sees what you're posting.
Wow.
So when you get them over into an email list and you're able to email them, the average open rate on the low side is 15%, and on the high side is 30%. And even if they're not opening, and actually the 30 is kind of like your regular high. I mean, I have had some emails for clients, sometimes depending on what it is. I've seen 50, 60. I've heard other people talk about where they've had 90% open rates, which is huge. So there's so much opportunity there that once you're in someone's email box, and even if they're not opening that email, they're still seeing your name. It's still keeping you top of mind. So even if your rates are on the lower side, even though they might not be opening it, they're actually at least seeing your email come into their box. So with all of our social content, we always want to get people to our website. And once they get to our website, we want to provide them some sort of value in order to get them to sign up for an email list. And the other good thing too is when someone does get to your website, and if they're hanging out there longer and checking you out, this actually helps your search engine optimization, which is how people find you through Google. So there's so many benefits of pushing people off of a social media platform and getting them onto your site. There was an Amy Porterfield quote that I heard her say, and it really struck me. And she said, "The strength of your business is directly tied to the quantity of your email list." Wow. Not how many followers you have on Instagram, not even how big your group is on Facebook. Like, it really comes down to the email list over time is really what's going to help grow your business. Now, some of the hows is the best how on how to get people on there is once someone shows up to your site, there are a number of places where you can ask them to join an email list. You can embed a form onto your website. You can have a pop-up. Mailchimp specifically, because I work with a lot of small businesses, this is it's a really easy thing to do. And once again, it's free to create some type of pop-up. So once someone's been on your site for a certain amount of time, or if they're trying to leave your site, you can send them a pop-up that says, "Hey, do you want to join my email list?" And it's not actually asking people. No one wants to join an email list and get more emails. What we want to do with those type of things, when that time comes, is we want to provide someone with some type of value or freebie or freemium. There's different names for them that entices that person to want to join an email list. The other, just like on your site, Kim, I believe you have, a free ebook where someone that shows up to your site, they would probably find that useful and interesting information that they would sign up to be able to get that free ebook from you. So you offer something of value, and not only do you offer something of value, but you create, when you're creating these freebies, you really want to pay attention to your subject line. I have seen different, even with my own business, where I've named something one way, and then if I name that freebie a different way, it helps with conversion when people come to the site. So thinking of something valuable, calling it something that's enticing to the person, and whether you're talking about the major value they're going to get as a title, or you're creating some type of curiosity gap, or you're creating some type of agitation where they kind of start to wonder, if they don't get this freebie, what information are they missing out on? And freebies come in all different forms. It doesn't just, the main easy one, and that's kind of what I've been talking about so far, is doing some type of PDF or checklist. But you could be offering someone a video. If you know, let's say you're an exercise person, you could offer someone a special video on how to do certain stomach exercises. Or let's say, for instance, last week I listened to a podcast and someone had on some type of quiz, and that I was interested to find out more about myself if I did this quiz. That a quiz is another really great freebie that you can do, although that one's a little bit more time consuming. And I think with programs like Canva, that where you can go on and you don't have to go onto Photoshop, you don't have to hire a designer. These freebies are something that you can create a professional looking PDF and have it on your site, and that you can do it completely yourself. And once you take the time to do this freebie that you give to your customers, it's a one-time investment. So that's the other thing I always try and remind clients. Yes, it's going to take some time to create this freebie, to hand it out. But once you do this one time, it just keeps on giving and giving in terms of adding subscribers to your site.
Oh yeah, I want to interject and just say that yeah, I have like a free recipe book on my website, and that is the I have like a a contact list. I have you can actually sign up for my newsletter, and then I have that, and that is really the only one that keeps growing on its own. And I haven't put any work into it since I created the website. So you're right, you just do it once and it's there, and people want it and they sign up for that email. And I did mine in Canva, so easy. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
Canva is amazing. I have spent
Yeah.
some time on Photoshop, and it's not pretty. Where you go
Yeah.
on the Canva, and it's just
Yeah.
amazing what you can do, and
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
anyone can be able to produce something. And the other thing too, for the basic plan on Canva, that's free as well. So it's
Mhm.
you're able to do all of these things at a really, really low cost, which I love for, if you're a small business and you're just starting out. And I also want to point out too, every small business that I have worked with up to this date, when it comes to my mind, no one has this is implementing. I think on the online world, you hear about this a lot. Small business world, not so much. So I think if you're a small business, brick and mortar, this is an awesome opportunity to really kind of take advantage and do something that other people aren't doing, because I don't see it a lot with a lot of small businesses. And then from there too, once someone signs up for your freebie, creating a welcome series, which is a series of emails that go out. When someone signs up for that freebie, they have an interest in you. And this is doing some type of welcome series where you create a series of emails that go out. And this could be, depending on what you want. Some people do 3 or 4. I've seen some do 10 or 14. Some people do longer email series, but that gets to be a bit much. But when you start sending out a series of emails to your new subscriber, it's the perfect opportunity to tell them a little bit more about your business, to try and sell to them, to create know, like, and trust. And so that's the second portion, is once you get that freebie up, taking some time and writing out a few emails with strong calls to action, so that you can try and hopefully start building that relationship. And who knows, also get a sale at the same time. I will say too, the other thing I love about welcome series is that if someone is signed up for your email and your freebie and they're really not interested in you, if you send out a series of emails right after, if you get people who unsubscribe, it's a good thing, because it means they weren't really truly interested in you, your business. Those people most likely would never have bought from you anyway. And so I also think it's a good time using that welcome series to build know, like, and trust, but also kind of weed out the people and get those people off the list that really aren't interested in you and your business anyway.
That's a really good point, because I think sometimes when I see people that unsubscribe from my site, I take it as like a personal offense. But you're right. Not everybody wants emails. I've learned to not think that way, because it's not really me per se. It's like they don't want their inbox cluttered. Like you said, if they're not appreciating the things that I have to put out there, then it actually just frees up more space, maybe in my Mailchimp account, for people who do want to subscribe. So that's a really good
Well, and
take on that.
I also think it's a good opportunity where someone might sign up for a freebie thinking, I just want to get this free information. But when you
Yeah.
send that welcome series out, you can kind of, use
Mhm.
you and your personality and infuse it into your copywriting to be like, hey, I know you got this freebie, but let me tell you more about me. And it kind of builds that relationship. And like I said,
Yeah.
I'm the same way. And this is a really hard thing with some of my clients. I had one recently and they were getting unsubscribes. And the reality is that when someone unsubscribes, they're not your customer, and
Mhm.
to take that and be okay with it. So, but
Right.
yeah, it's definitely hard when you get those emails back, or you see your list drop a little bit,
Yeah.
right?
Right, exactly. Now, let me ask you, this is just out of curiosity on my part. The welcome series, can you create that in Mailchimp
Yep,
as well? Okay.
you can create a series of emails in Mailchimp, and you can do this through whether you have Active Campaign, MailerLite. There's so many different ones.
Yeah.
Like I said, I always focus on Mailchimp because that's what most of my clients have been on, and I find it
Yeah.
easy to use. But you can set it up where they go out every couple days. You can set up the in between. You can have your freebie that goes that's directly embedded onto the first email that you send them. You can do things. Even Mailchimp is great with with GDPR and other types of if you're looking to do something a little bit different, segmentation. It's not, if you're really, really growing and blowing up your email list, at some point, MailChimp may not work for you. But just
Mhm.
to start off, yes, you can totally do a welcome series, and it's a very easy to use.
Okay, great. That sounds good. I do find I use Mailchimp. I'm not the most savvy, but I do find it pretty easy to use. That's what I use for my weekly emails. So it's a very good tip. Um, so getting back to the websites just a little bit, what do you think are the main pages that everyone should have on their websites if they have a website?
Well, I think before we even go into the main pages, I think the most important thing on your website, Donald Miller, he wrote How to Build Your Story Brand. It's a great book, especially if anyone's kind of starting out and looking for a good resource. But the one thing that he says that I always think when I go on to I help people with their strategy and kind of audit their sites and help make recommendations. And the quote that he has, or close to it, is you want to make it so easy a caveman can navigate it.
Mhm.
And that always sticks out to me. Like, simple is better. I see
Mhm.
websites a lot of times that are, I think sometimes we think, oh, we got to put in more information. We got to let our people know everything that we do. And yes, your website is, but I think just keep in mind the user experience when you're creating your website.
Mhm.
And so the home page, of course, is the most important, making sure it's very easy to navigate. That I see a lot of times people forget to put their social icons on there. Remembering to do that. You want to create an easy to navigate. You want to make sure your top fold of your website, so the part that you see before you have to scroll, you want to
Mhm.
make sure it's very clear who you are, what your business does, who you serve, and how it's going to benefit the client. So creating some type of elevator pitch, making sure it's very prominent on your homepage so that when someone shows up to your site, they know very clearly what you do and how you're going to help them. I also, because I'm once again, of course, such a huge proponent of getting people onto your email list, is that if you can add a button or some type of call to action to get people onto your email list on that top fold, I always recommend it. And even so, if you can have a button up in the upper right-hand side that asks for some type of call to action, we want to be very clear with the user the action that we want them to take. And so going in when you're looking at your homepage, and you can even ask someone to do this for you, what do you see and what's the first thing you want to do? And that is definitely the first part. The second part is your about page. Most people don't realize that your about page is the second most visited page on someone's website. So having a really good about page, and even though your about page is about you and your business, you really want to write about it in terms of benefits for the client. So yes, it's great that you do all these things, but especially at the very beginning, who are you and how is that going to help your ideal client? And really thinking about the words that you use to describe yourself, to make sure that you can create a connection with the person who's reading your about page. The other thing that I heard somewhat recently, which I thought was interesting, and I went on that I believe this was on Neil Patel's website. He talked about how A. Weber revealed that there was a business called Quality Stocks. When they added an opt-in form on their about page, it resulted in 158% increase in subscriber growth.
Wow.
Meaning that when they put, and once again, I think this is something that a lot of people don't realize, is that putting some type of call to action on your about page at the very bottom is super important also. So getting someone to try and subscribe to, book a call or subscribe to, or get this freebie or whatever your call to action is, but putting a call to action on your about page is also very important. And then the other pages that, of course, that are and when I say these pages, these would be the pages that you see in your header of the website that people can easily click on.
Mm-hmm.
Having your about page, having a contact us page that's very clear about, how people can get a hold of you. And I personally, thinking about too, like adding a phone number. I think sometimes especially in this online world, we're kind of shy about, putting some information and just having an embedded form for people to contact us on. And some users will not take that extra action to go through and do an embedded form. So kind of think about that depending on what type of business you are. What I always think, what's going to be the easier user experience? What would be the best? Testimonials page or some type of reviews page where you're talking about whatever it is that you've done. Also really important, people, when it comes to reviews and testimonials, we are and I might have mentioned this last time, we are so much more likely to believe what someone else says about our business than, if someone comes, a person will, I think it's something around 80% believe a review like they believe a personal recommendation. So reviews are very important to use not only on our website, but our social proof. If you have if you're doing services or products or portfolio, I always recommend having some type of page where people can go on and look at that. And then last and not least, if you have a blog, and if you don't have a blog, really considering having one. Not only does a blog provide a lot of value to your clients, it gives you content that you can put out, through social or other channels. The one thing a blog does when you do it properly is it helps create keywords for Google for search engine optimization. And not only does it do that, when people come to your site and they're reading your blog, they're reading your information, they spend more time on your site, which helps also with keeping people on the site longer, which helps your bounce rate, which helps your SEO. And last but not least, not only does it help all those other things, but if you're not updating your site regularly, Google almost like dings you. They want to see that you're active on your website and that you're updating it for search engine optimization. So a blog is, even though some people are like, oh, I got to do a blog on my site, it is an important component if you're trying to maximize your search engine optimization.
Wow. There's a lot there. No, in a good way. I'm trying to organize my thoughts on what I was going to say. Well, first of all, I I do have an about page on my website, and I do not have a call to action. So you've given me something to think about. And I think that makes sense. I didn't realize that was the second most popular page. So that is very interesting. And I think it makes sense because people want to know the person behind the blog. They want to see a picture of you or whatever. So I have that, but that makes a lot of sense. So that gave me something to think about. And wow, if you can get email addresses from that, that's even better. Also, what I was going to say about a blog, I do feel like I have one, but I do feel like it kind of gets overwhelming. And for those of you out there who, I mean, I love to write too. It's just a matter of time. How do we spend the time when we're doing all these other things, or maybe you are selling products or whatever, and you're not really thinking about writing a blog. One of the things I was going to say is that blogs don't have to be long and they don't have to be complicated. And in fact, sometimes shorter blog posts are more effective because you're getting your point across. I think at least on my site, some of my like really long blog posts that I've written that are more of like, because I'm a researcher in background, that are like all these, like I've gone really into the depths of health research and giving points. I don't think those get hit on as much as some of my like, here are the 5 steps to do this, and it's just like, it's a shorter thing. So
in
I know
of effectiveness, though, if you look, the websites that have the highest SEO that land on the first page, typically they are longer blog posts. And it's probably because people are spending more time on your site when they come on there. And secondly, not only that, but you're using more keywords that are getting picked up and crawled by Google. However, I'm with you. Like if writing a 1,500, 2,000 word blog post, and if you're a researcher, maybe even longer, it's very, very time consuming. So, I think just getting information out there that you can refer people to, it's not only SEO, of course it's being able to refer people. And if they're coming on and being overwhelmed, but if you are going to write a long one, making sure that you're using a lot of subheads, bolding, italics, breaking up your text. But I agree. I think you don't want to make a blog post longer just for the sake of trying to make it long for Google, right? You want to make it the right length that you can talk about the topic that makes the most sense. It's going to be that Google's very concerned about user experience. And so keep that in the back of your mind. For anyone who's listening, that the most important thing is, can someone show up, read this blog post and walk away with tangible, useful information and not be overwhelmed? That's what you want to do.
Yeah, I like that. And I think, when I feel inspired, then I do tend to, I get wordy, but I can write a really long post. But if I feel like I have if I'm under pressure to write long posts like that all the time, then I just kind of like don't even do it. And I think it's better to just have something there, like you have an idea and you're creating, even if it's a shorter blog post about it, just because like you said, it's getting updated more regularly. And if you just have a stagnant blog that you're really not writing on very much, it doesn't get picked up as much. And I know, Brenna, in a few minutes, you're going to be talking to us a little bit about some of those background things and the SEO and things. So we'll get to that again in a minute. But one of the questions that I also had for you was, so aesthetically speaking, so you've talked to us about some of those top pages, but aesthetically speaking, what makes one website stand out from another? And like, what are the things that are appealing to users when they come to your site?
Well, once again, not being too busy, not having too much information, creating some white space, breaking, especially on the home pages, breaking up your text into very small, easy to read chunks. If you are writing something on these pages, using subheads or subtitles where it's appropriate. I always, going back to, and I've said this before, just making sure it's just easy to navigate. Think about the user. We're all bombarded with so much information. When someone shows up to your site, the goal is, of course, to get them on there to stay longer with reading our blogs or providing information. But if they can't find what they're looking for easily, we give up. Like we are an impatient people that really
Mhm.
want things done now. So really think about that. One of my previous positions that I held, I actually wrote these technical documents. I worked for a website development company, and they would go through and we would create apps or websites for these big companies. And part of my job was to go through each section of the website and break it up and think about when you did a certain action, where it would take you and what would happen. And so kind of going through and maybe thinking more of a technical mind for a moment is when someone does, presses on this button, where is it going to take them? Is it a very easy experience for that person? The other thing that I would do is when you create a new website, especially if you're building one yourself, but I would say I wouldn't rely on a designer all the time either, is give it to a family member and ask them, hey, navigate this for me. Tell me if this was easy for you to find. Tell me, what was the first thing that you noticed about the site? What caught their eye first? Ask them some questions and get an outside, it's just like if someone's checking anything of us. When we have someone else kind of look in, sometimes they'll bring some outside perspective that will help us. And especially if you're paying someone, doing this before, you finalize it, making sure that you don't realize after the fact that you're missing some major components on how to navigate your website.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think sometimes when we're in the development of it, or even a part of developing a website, we can't really obviously see like an outsider can, because we're so ingrained and we know what's happening and we know where everything is, but it's hard to take a step back and see it through someone else's eyes. So that's a really good point, just having someone, and maybe even somebody who isn't the most computer savvy.
Definitely.
Yeah, because if it can make sense to someone who doesn't often visit websites like yours, then and they can navigate it, then you're on the right track. So, like, along the same lines, then, what are some things that we should not have on our sites, or that might not be visually appealing or user friendly?
Well, one of the things I talked about on an Instagram post recently, and it was very interesting to me, is that most people don't realize, and I think like 80% of the clients I've helped as of late, they all have carousel headers on their websites, which means that they have when you get to their homepage, that top hero image area, they have some type of scrolling pictures. And I think that, as a business owner, we think we want to give more information. We want to show them all the cool things we do. And the fact of the matter is that carousels are horrible for conversion. If you really start to research it, they don't convert as well. Some users will just actually, and I had several comments even on this post that I did, where people were like, oh yeah, if I see a carousel header, like I'm out. Like I can't deal with the information that's passing by me. And
Mhm.
keep in mind that probably close to 80% of people at this point, and I'm throwing out a number there, it might be a little bit less or a little bit more. It's definitely the majority of people that show up to websites at this point start there at first from a mobile device. So you have to think, if you have this little mobile device and you have a website and then you have these pictures that are scrolling by, it's almost like too much. So really keep in mind that it's better to have one picture, once again going back, having very clear call to action, and then you can always take people where they want to go on other parts of the website, but really keeping your header very, very focused as to what you want the user to do. I always, going back again, always saying less is more. I think the one thing that people forget visually appealing is photographs. I think words are so important. So making sure you don't have too much text, but I also think making sure that your photographs make sense, that they're branded. It's amazing. Sometimes I've helped clients where I have one in my mind in particular, where I just went in and swapped out pictures and made them all kind of the same tone, had the same feeling. And the website looked 60% better with just good branded photography that made sense. So keep in mind that your photos really need to be, make sense on your site. The other thing is, if you are going to use like a carousel somewhere on your homepage for reviews, I definitely don't recommend it for the header, but making sure that it goes slow, that you set the timer up, that people have plenty of time to read the text, and that it's not just scrolling by them.
Mm.
And even yesterday, I'm helping a new client with their website build, and we're going through she has a WordPress theme, all the different options. And I started cutting parts of the homepage out because they were redundant. They weren't necessary. They didn't speak to the bigger message. So it really look at your homepage and think, okay, do people need this much information? You want to provide enough. So I don't want it to be the tone like you shouldn't have anything on your homepage, but just being very, very thoughtful about the person who's, popping onto your site, especially when they're popping on for mobile, and making sure it's very clear to them what you do and easy for them to navigate.
Interesting. I have two questions about that. So, can there be too many pages on your website?
Yes.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think so.
Okay.
I would say I go in thinking about a different client that I've had
Mhm.
where there's so many, she didn't have a ton of header tabs, but you would click on one of those header tabs
Mhm.
and there would be like 10 options underneath
Mm,
each
mhm.
one. And we just have to start thinking, can we add things we want to provide value. So the most important parts want to be on the website, but can we add some of this information in with a blog post later, or
Mhm.
that you could refer people to? If someone's asking you a question, oh, hey, I have this blog post I could refer you to, or can you condense pages down? Like, really, once again, going back to that Donald Miller, is you want a caveman to be able to
Mhm.
navigate it. And
Mhm.
there are times where I see that people want to get way too much information onto the site, and I think it
Yeah.
becomes confusing and overwhelming.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then I had a question about, you're talking about the photos, which I think is really important because, personally, when I look at a website, I'm kind of like drawn in by the photography, and I do think, excuse me, gets too busy when you see like a lot of wordings or a lot of reviews scrolling across, or like you said, the carousel. I never thought of that, but I think it is true. It's kind of like a dizzying experience. But when I'm thinking about with the photos, would you recommend like all the photos being like kind of like in the same color scheme? Like, would you maybe use filters like you do on Instagram, like to create like a cohesive look to your website?
Yes. I don't think they
Okay.
have to be all filtered as perfectly as Instagram, because you think
Okay.
Instagram, they're all next to each other, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
but however, if you use a filter, it does bring some cohesion.
Okay.
Whenever I start helping a client and we're kind of going in with we start at the branding messages, we always create a mood board. Um, a
Hmm.
mood board you can find on, if you're not having someone help you design it, you can find it on Pinterest. You can create one in Canva. There's a
Mhm.
lot of different ways to do mood boards, but starting off and having your branding colors,
Mhm.
once again, if your color scheme's all crazy, it throws the person off too. It doesn't, your mood board, your colors kind of help the tone of your brand and help people,
Mhm.
depending if you're doing, what season of colors. Like, there's a lot of psychology behind it, but I think if your pictures are all over the place and your colors are all over the place, once again, I think it brings up confusion
Yeah.
to the brain, and keeping things
Yeah.
on brand as possible is important.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for clarifying that. Um, so, getting back to our sites again, what are some tips and tricks that we can do on the back end, like behind the scenes when we're creating our websites, that would maximize traffic to our sites?
Well, there's tons of things you can do. I mean, SEO, we could talk. I mean,
Hmm.
Google and their SEO, it's crazy how much, different ways that they rank you. But there's some basic things, and especially things that I see over and over again from people that they don't realize. And when you are creating it, you want to make sure that simple things like your alt text or your descriptions for your pictures. So what this is, let's say you snap a shot on your iPhone or your camera and you want to put it onto your site. you are automatically assigned a file name like DSC dash blah, blah, blah. What you want to do, because Google actually goes in and reads the file names. They send their crawlers over. Is you want to do something very simple you can do for your SEO is do file save as and save that picture with something that is keyword and SEO friendly. So that's a real basic tip and the way you can figure out if this is done on your current website is if you go to your site and you right click and you do save as, it'll pull up what that file name is on the picture. And good to know if anyone has a Squarespace site, you can easily fix the file name in Squarespace. That's a little extra tip. But
I have Squarespace.
yeah, if you go into your
Okay.
Squarespace and you go into where the photo is, you can actually just simply change the file name right in there. You don't have to save it again.
That's so
So that's
exciting.
one nice thing about Squarespace.
Wow, thank you.
No problem. The other thing that you want to make sure is you want to make sure your pictures have alt text. When you click on a picture, it gives a description to the sight impaired. So if you're on Google, that is what the alt text is. But Google also uses its crawlers to read what those images are. So when you do alt text, you're basically saying, hey, Google, this picture is, this and this and this. And it helps once again with your search engine optimization. And I actually pulled up a quote where Google themselves says, by adding more context around your images, results can become much more useful, which can lead to higher quality traffic to your site. And that's directly what Google's saying. So all text and,
Can I ask you, I'm sorry, Brenna, what is alt text? Like, it's not what you save it as.
It's not as you save it as. It's done typically within, I haven't done a ton on Squarespace on your WordPress site. There's an actual section that you can go in and assign alt text.
Oh,
and
I see.
alt text is when someone who has sight impairment is actually on Google, they're able to click on that and know what kind of picture you use. So it's a description of your picture. But not only is it for the sight impaired, it also helps with your search engine optimization. So the other thing that's really important to do is to make sure your images are compressed properly, that your image size are not too big. You want to another thing I see a lot is images that are saved as 300 DPI, the resolution. And then for that, 300 DPI is for print, 72 DPI is for online resolution. So making sure none of your pictures, because the larger your resolution is, the higher, the longer it's going to take to load onto your site. So when images are too large, they actually impact your site speed. And Google says that 53% of people on mobile leave a site if it takes more than 3 seconds to load. And then in July 2018, Google actually announced that site speed is a major factor in their ranking. So if your site is running slow, it's going to hurt you on Google a lot. So making sure that whatever, most themes or sites, or if you use Squarespace, I believe they do a lot of the compression on their own. But you want to save your file as small as it can be saved to give the best resolution. So you don't want it to be grainy or not look good, but you want to save your pictures as small as you possibly can. The other thing that can really help maximize traffic to your sites is doing keyword research for your blogs or for your headers. And these are the keywords that Google is going to be searching for using its crawlers on. If you have a WordPress site, installing something like a Yoast plugin can really help you with some of this. The other thing that helps with keywords and making sure things are on your blog properly is you can use sites. One of my favorite is, once again, Neil Patel. He has something called Uber Suggest, where you can go in and you type in a keyword phrase and it'll actually give you suggestions on which keywords are good, which ones are ranking. Another one, I think it's KW Keyword Finder. That's another place to be able to go in and do keyword research, and to make sure that you're using keywords that people are looking for, which will help with your search engine optimization. My last little tip on here too is if you're linking to like an outbound link to someone else, or even if you're linking to yourself, making sure that when you are doing that hyperlink in your blog or your website, that you're telling it to open it in a new tab. And what that does is, let's say you write a blog and you name several different sites that aren't your site. If someone clicks on one of those links, it will still leave your website page up while they look at the secondary link. It'll open it in a new tab, because once again, the longer someone's on your site, the better it is for SEO. So you want them to keep that page open to help with your search engine optimization.
Yes. And I also think that's better for the user experience too,
Yeah,
because
because then they
sometimes you want to
click
go
off your
back.
site.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's annoying to keep going back and forth. The Uber suggest that you mentioned, is this on Neil Patel's website, or does he have
If you
it's
Google Uber Suggest, it will come up. I
okay.
think the actual
Okay.
URL is something like Neil Patel
Okay.
/ Uber Suggest.
Okay.
But he's taken, interestingly enough, a lot of the functions that you can do on his site, you used to have to pay for
Yeah.
with other companies. And he is providing so much that you could, once you get onto Uber Suggest, I should write a blog post about that, because it's pretty amazing what you can
Mhm.
do, not only for keyword research, but you can find out
Mhm.
a whole lot about what your competitors are doing, and
Interesting.
kind of find out what keywords they're using, and be able to use some of those keywords to hopefully attract that same traffic to your site. So there's a lot of fun things that you can do on Uber Suggest. Well, fun if you are a bit of a website nerd like me,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. No, I think that is really good information. That and it reminds me of Pinterest in a way, because they always say that Pinterest is actually a search engine. It's not just like a website for pinning things. So like
definitely.
I've had tips before of, how do you when you're how do you when you're describing your pins, your photos that you're pinning, if you open up Pinterest and type in like what it's about, like for me, like podcast, and it'll give you at the top of Pinterest like the drop down of like, these are the things that people are searching for in Pinterest, like podcasts about health, about women, and you can use those in the description of your pin to help you gain more traffic. So it's pretty fascinating.
And
you
that's
know
exactly
Mhm.
how keyword research or keywords work on Google too. Like where they'll
Yeah.
go in and you put in, that phrase, and it will help you create long tail keywords, which is basically not, long tail keywords are a phrase that you want
Mhm.
to be able to put into your headers and things, your titles, things like that, to help with your search engine optimization. But yes, Pinterest is a great
Mhm.
example of that. And
Yeah.
Pinterest is great too, because not only if you're using those words within Pinterest, you can be found, but Google also picks up Pinterest too, based on some of
Mm.
those. So you can actually be found through Google to your Pinterest by using the right keywords.
So that's interesting. So we could actually be pinning, we should probably be pinning photographs from our website with
Oh,
descriptions as
definitely.
well. Yeah. Very good tip. Okay. So, as we know, and as people can tell from the conversation, having a website is a lot of work, and especially on the front end, because we have to create our own content. We talked about all those blog posts and things that, keep us busy. So, what are some ways that we can use content in multiple locations? So, how can we use the content over and over again, or several times at least, to get the most bang for our buck?
Well, I I think sometimes we think, oh, we have to create all this content. Like if I'm not creating enough
Mhm.
content, and I do this to myself too. I'm a worker bee, right? Like what do I have to
Mhm.
create? And remembering that repurposing content actually reinforces your message. You want to repurpose content, because is your people need to see things, is it like 7 to 12 times before they buy or purchase. So eh, repurposing content actually only helps you and helps your message and helps get it across. So first, keep that in mind. It's not cheating. You're actually doing yourself a favor by doing it. Not to mention that it saves time. And I think
Mhm.
too, we also have to remember that once again, only 2 to 6% of these people are seeing organic content on social. And, and now I'm going to say that number is probably going to drop especially on Facebook with these new algorithm changes. So I always think how can we repurpose the same thing? So a couple of ideas I jotted down. Can you use your blog post? Can it also be your Instagram caption? Can you put part of your blog post in an email and tease to get them over to your website? Can you pull a quote from one of the blog posts you wrote and make that an Instagram image and talk about it and try and get them over to your site? Other ideas that I've had that I've started doing recently too is, let's say you create, I just did this for a giveaway, but I think you can do it several different ways, is I created an Instagram post, and then I was doing a giveaway. So I created on my client's page, a post on Instagram, and then I went and did an email because I wanted her email list to also know about the giveaway, and I wanted to push them to Instagram in this instance. And I was able to embed that Instagram post directly into my email. So all they had to do, they could actually see the Instagram post and they could just click on that, and it took them directly to Instagram. I've also done this on where I have wanted to give an example about an Instagram post in one of my blogs. You can actually embed your Instagram post into your blog post on your website. The other things to do is, when you're whenever you're creating one piece of content, how can you break it, chop it up, talk about it in different ways, and do different posts about it? If you're someone who likes video and does YouTube video, could you convert that also into an IGTV or vice versa? Can you take that exact video and then write a quick summary and embed it onto your website for a blog post? Can you take a real quick snippet of that video and put it on as an Instagram post or a Facebook post? Can you go do an Instagram or Facebook Live and talk about the video that you just did to get people to go watch your video? So I think when we start thinking about things from different angles, and even going further, we were just talking about Pinterest. Can you do a blog post and just simply create a pin about it? And then you can link that to your Pinterest. Wherever you're creating and taking time to create a piece of content, I would start thinking about it of, how can I repurpose it? How can I drive people to my site? Is this something that I can reuse? And I've even seen people who have written blog posts and they go, hey, this would be a great freebie, and I can create a PDF out of this information that is directly handed to, that you can even use as a freebie on your site if someone signs up. It's okay to repurpose. I think one of my favorite books is called Content Inc. And if my memory serves me correctly, this person wrote this entire book. It's just a culmination of all of the blog posts that he had written, and then he combined them and put them all into a book. Like, there's so many ways we can repurpose content. Repurposing is really, the king of the show here, where any way that we can reuse something, it's going to only reinforce our message and make it easier on us. Mm-hmm. And I think it helps keep our audience, keeps them kind of focused on our main message.
I really like that, because it's just such a breath of fresh air for me, because I think I get overwhelmed, like you said, just trying to create this content. And I like that you're saying it's really not cheating, because sometimes I feel like, oh gosh, I would have already mentioned this, but you're right. For me, I totally feel that through Facebook, that the algorithms are changing. I will put, and this is another thing, that you can cross post from Instagram to Facebook. I know this is going off the topic of websites for a minute, but like, I'll post something on my Instagram page and then I'll post it on my Health Writer, my Facebook page. And it's interesting because I will get a lot more engagement on Instagram than Facebook. And I think it's because of the algorithm. But you can repurpose it that way. But one of the things that you taught me, this is a while ago, you had it as a tip on Instagram. And I was like, I think I even like wrote about it in my stories or something, because I was like, this is the biggest game changer I have ever heard, that you can, on Instagram, because I will spend a lot of time writing captions sometimes on Instagram. And for Instagram, they're long. For a blog post, they're not, it's not quite a long blog post, but there are those 3 dots, like at the top of your post, and you can click on those if you're on your desktop, and it gives you an embed link, and you can embed that code right into your website. So I can't tell you how many quote unquote blog posts I've taken. And it basically, it shows my Instagram post. It shows the picture, the caption that I wrote. I'm not sure. I think it might show some of the comments too, but it is a clickable link that'll take them right to Instagram. But it's given me more content from my blog too. And it updates, my blog. So if I don't have time to write a post, or I'm not inspired to write a post, but I know that I spent time writing an Instagram post, and I think, well, why wouldn't my readers of my website want to see it too? So I just love that. I love that you've given us permission to do that too.
I know I got an email, I think it was a few weeks ago, from my favorite copywriter ever, Laura Belgray. And she even just gave me more permission, where she talked about, and I mean, this is a lady, she works with Marie Forleo, the copy cure.
Mm-hmm.
And she basically just said, like, hey, you can totally repurpose. You do you. Like, and I think that's like,
Yeah.
what can you do to be consistent with? Like, in a perfect world, yes, we would have all this different information and do, this blog post and this and this and this. But, what can you do and commit to be consistent? Because consistency is way more important than having tons of content out there sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Where can you find and be consistent? And I've started doing this even for myself. Like, I'm so busy and there's so many things I want to do. And then I'm like, nope, like, I'm just starting to send my Tuesday tips that's what I'm going to send to my email list every week now. And I'm going to also put it on Instagram. And if people see it a couple times, hopefully it only helps reinforce the message, because, we're all so busy. What can we do to, give ourselves some grace in all of this, and still be effective?
Yeah, I love that. And like, even, I'm thinking about our podcast here. We spend a lot of time, recording, editing it, doing all the graphics, getting it onto the website. And so we're like, why not use it? So I send out a weekly email that includes, what the week's episode is about, with clickable links. I create, and that is kind of like a blog on my website. I have like my podcast blog, and then my regular writing blog, and then we create Instagram and Facebook posts from that. So we're using it so many times, and we actually do upload our podcast to YouTube. For right now, it's just like a still picture of us, because we, as Brenna knows, we're not. I can't even see her right now. We're using Zencaster to record, but eventually, Lori and I may start using Zoom, where we can actually see each other and record. And so we have it on YouTube as well. And, we're not getting probably a lot of views on YouTube, but it's there. So just repurposing it as much as possible, I think that's great. And that gives people, a little bit of freedom, in that you don't have to like reinvent the wheel and do all of these long, extensive blog posts and spend all your time doing that when you can repurpose things and reuse them, it really pays off, because people will see it in multiple places, or they're probably only seeing it in one place, but it allows you the freedom, to spend your time doing other things too.
Exactly.
So Brenna, yeah, I appreciate so much all of these tips. You are so, so, so smart. And I know people will want to connect with you. So tell everybody where they can find you and what you offer.
I am always a little bit too much. I'm always on Instagram. So you can find me at The Social Rescue. My website is the same name, www.thesocialrescue.com. And then if you do go to my site and you sign up to be my email list, right now my freebie is 10 strategic steps every business owner needs to take for their business. And I will actually be updating my freebie in the next couple of weeks, which I'll send out to my current email list too. I'm working on a brand new one about welcome series and how to create them pretty easily. So go get on that list.
Those are great resources. So I am going to jump on and become part of your list too, even though I stalk you on Instagram, but I want those too. So thank you so, so much for being here 2 weeks in a row. And I know that our listeners will find some really valuable information from these interviews.
Perfect. And if anyone has any questions too, whether I have my email addresses up on my website, and I'm always around on direct message too on Instagram. So please feel to reach out and send me a message.
And I can attest to the fact that she will get back to you, and she'll probably even leave you a voice message back. So, all right. Thanks so much, Brenna.
Thank you.
That's it for today. For more from Kim, you can go to kimmaravich.com. For more from Lori, go to simplyempoweredllc.com. We're always open to listener questions or suggestions for the show. You can email those to contact@awholenewyou.podcast.com. We'd also love it if you joined our Facebook community and followed us on Instagram. Just search for A Whole New You Podcast. And lastly, if you'd be so kind as to leave us a rating and review in iTunes, we would really appreciate that so more people can find our show and join our community. We'll see you next week.